It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Yeah, that's right. I'm back. It's Shaun Haney, your host here of RealAg Radio on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show. It is, honestly, it is so great to be back. You don't know how much I missed being with you here every day. It was a great couple week vacation. And not much of a vacation. It just felt like I drove. I'll talk about that in a second. But hey, thanks so much for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your work day. And of course, a big shout out to everybody else out there listening on the RealAg Radio podcast. Yeah, so did do a couple days at the lake. It was nice. And then we basically just delivered kids to school and university. There was that. Yeah, it was a busy. I think last week I drove about 2,000 miles. I haven't totally charted it out, but it had to be about 2,000 miles I drove. And got a good crop tour. Drove from Lethbridge to Edmonton. Definitely varied conditions. Definitely saw some combines along that trip. And then on the weekend, drove from Lethbridge, Alberta, down across Montana on the High Line, over to Bismarck to drop my kid off, my oldest, at the University of Mary down there in Bismarck as well. And so that was a good crop tour. I saw a few combines running around that Glendive, Montana area, but for the most part, most stuff on the High Line, pretty much in the bin and off the land for sure. And harvest definitely in the air. Lots of dust. You can definitely feel it. Going back to the beginning of August, I've told people fall's here, and people are like, no, stop. But you could tell the air change. And I've been saying this to people that you're like, oh yeah, totally. If you've run combine, and all of you have that are pretty much listening to this for the most part or been around it, you're sensitive to those air changes. Where you're like, oh yeah, that's different, right? Like you on some years, it's like that August 31st to September 1st, that switch to September we just went through. You really feel it. I think we felt it earlier. The dews are already here. And, it definitely feels like fall. We get pretty good temperatures during the day, and the night's, temp is, she drops. So it's in Western Canada, it's going to be a quick harvest. We know this. And I'm going to talk to Peter Johnson about that when he joins us here today on the program. And harvest definitely well underway in Ontario and Eastern Canada as well. Edible beans, people are going at them. So lots to chat about with Peter Johnson here today on the program. We're also being joined by Jamie Pegg. He is with Honeybee, and he'll be here today as well. And also, I think, have some time at the back end of the show for some top ag news stories of the day. If you have any feedback on today's program, we'd love to hear from you. This is your opportunity. Did you miss me while I was gone? Maybe you didn't. You can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms. They're YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. Actually, we're not supposed to say Twitter anymore. I think it's X, Instagram, TikTok, Threads. We're Real Agriculture on all those platforms. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Would love to hear how you're making out there in farm country in your fields. Maybe how your grass conditions are. Catch me up to speed on how you're making out. I kind of didn't do a lot on social media while I was gone. Did stay connected to what was happening. I listened to Lindsay do a great job of hosting this show. But I want to get back up to speed here and reconnect with you. So any of those ways, you can get a hold of me and let me know how things are looking. Our yields worse than you thought, considered, some of the expectations? Are they better in some areas? And I know we got varied conditions across a lot of the country and into the U.S., but keep me updated. Oh, yeah, speaking of crop conditions in the U.S., we're burning up in some of those parts, especially in Iowa. Yeah, not good. So that's a big time concern. Saw that Pro Farmer Crop Tour, 172 on the corn yield. So that's definitely going to have an impact on what happens on these markets, depending on what happens with supply or what happens with demand. So but get a hold of me, Haney at RealAgriculture.com. Let me know how you're making out with your fall activities. Let's take a break. When we come back, let's bring in Peter Johnson, the man, the myth, the legend himself. Find out what's happening in his neck of the woods and across the country, what he's hearing from you, the audience. We'll do that when we come back right after this.
At Brett Young, we focus on what's real. It's how we became Canada's largest independent seed company. That's why we're asking a real farmer, what do you think of BY6217TF, Brett Young's TrueFlex canola hybrid?
What's that?
BY6217TF, Brett Young's TrueFlex canola hybrid with Pod Defender shatter reduction technology and Defender-rated club root and blackleg resistance.
Good yield, yeah. Probably choose it again.
Thanks, Chris. Talk to your Brett Young retailer today to see for yourself. Brett Young, distinct by design.
Dedication. Watching the sunset over your crop is one of life's simple pleasures. The anticipation of it all. We know that feeling. Introducing our new Airflex NXT, our best honeybee header yet with the closest cut ever. Light, fast reacting, and infinitely adjustable. More yield, less time and work. Airflex NXT focuses on the future. What drives your next? Visit honeybee.ca or contact your nearest honeybee dealer.
Does your N stabilizer contain an active ingredient load high enough to be agronomically effective? If not, it could be costing you time and money. If you're putting down a nitrogen stabilizer, put your trust in Koch Agronomic Services. Solutions like Super U, Tribune, and Anvil. Each delivers high active ingredient concentrations that low-rate products just can't match. Compare how imitator products stack up to agronomically effective solutions at defendyourn.ca.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Wednesday. Hey, you want true nitrogen protection? I think everybody does. Skip imitator products for an agronomically effective solution like Super U Premium Fertilizer from Koch Agronomic Services. Super U protects against all three forms of loss and is proven to boost yield potential. See how others stack up at defendyourn.ca. Well, let's get into it here. Our guest, it feels like forever since him and I chatted. He went on holidays. I was on holidays. Well, we're back together. It is Pete Johnson. Pete, how's it going?
It's going awesome, thanks, Sean. We're right at the beginning of harvest. We're at the beginning of planting all our winter crops. Finally, the last few days, we've had high temperatures. We need it for the corn crop to mature. Keep the temperatures coming. The forecast isn't quite as positive as it was a few days ago, but nonetheless, life is good. Just keep it coming.
Now, I'm trying to remember which of the pioneer agronomists a couple weeks ago on our Thursday show, the Farmer Rapid Fire, which Pioneer Seeds Canada sponsors, one of the agronomists brought up a concern they have, and not overstating it, but we're in that time of the year where it's like, will the corn finish? How concerned are you, based on the fact that we have not had those desirable levels of heat units?
Yeah, so Sean, it's really, really interesting, and I don't know that we understand planting date perspective from an accumulated crop heat unit status, or in the U.S. they talk about growing degree days or just days. We're only about 6 days behind, but up until about the 1st of September, when you looked at development, we were 2 weeks behind, and tasseling was just crazy late this year. Everybody was scratching their heads why that was. So when you say, how concerned am I? We there's a rule of thumb or a guide that we often use here in Ontario, and Greg Stewart, he's the guy that started this, and it's you need to have a hint of dent by the 1st of September or by August 31st. And I looked at a bunch of cornfields right in that time frame, and I was pretty disappointed the first number of cornfields, because I was about 10% that actually had a hint of dent. And we're not talking every kernel dented. We're talking just one or two on the cob. But I got into some more fields, and so I'm kind of in the thought process that maybe a third or 40% of our fields are there. But there's tremendous variability even within those fields, that there's like areas that are 2 weeks behind the rest of the field. And when you have that hint of dent, you actually have only accumulated 45% of the dry matter in the kernel. So you're not even halfway. And if you're not halfway on the 1st of September, we don't even want to hear a whisper about frost until, the 10th or the 15th of October. So every day that goes past with good weather, if we can get these 30-degree days all September long, at the end of September, I'm going to say to you, Shaun, what is the problem? Life is golden, but if we get into a whole bunch of 15-degree days and 5-degree nights, yeah, we don't need that. That's for sure.
Hint of dent. It sounds like you've got like a witch's brew. Like, when you're putting stuff into the cauldron, like a hint of rat's tail.
Yeah, but I like hint of dent because even though it really doesn't rhyme, you can make it rhyme. It's supposed to be dent, not dint, but hey, what the heck?
That's all good. Meanwhile, out west, harvest feels early, and it is early. It's not just a case of feel. A lot of that is due to, in some areas, pretty substantial heat. More so, I think, on the eastern side of the prairies. I know where I'm in Alberta, it's mainly due to the fact that it's been so bloody dry. But harvest progressing. I guess you could say night will be done. We'll have lots of time to do some fall work if it ever rains.
Well, exactly. And so I talked to some edible bean experts on Tuesday, and good grief, they said that as of the long weekend, like the Labor Day weekend, that 40% of the edible bean harvest was essentially already delivered to the elevator, and that's 2 weeks ahead of where they often are. And soybeans are coming in for harvest. Like there's just no worry at all this year, from what I hear in West. A maturity perspective, looks like everything's coming in early. Now, the areas that were hot, Shaun, and even the areas that were dry, man, wheat does not like it hot. It'll stand it dry, but it doesn't like it hot. And so some of the yields have been a little bit disappointing. But on the other hand, some of the real early seeding stuff. So Daniel Konopelski, that did the winter wheat, the early frost seeded spring wheat. I haven't seen his spring wheat yet. He was at the harvest. I haven't seen the yield yet, but I think he said that the winter wheat ran 58 bushels per acre, which nobody's excited about that. But if I recall correctly, it was 58 bushels per acre on, I think he said 68 millimeters of rainfall all year. And if I have those numbers right, that is just stinking incredible that you could get that far on that little rainfall.
Yeah, and then there's areas. I had a listener from around Edmonton phone me last week, and he was saying like around, I think it was Westlock, Alberta, they had something like 15 to 20 inches in 1 week. Like I don't think it's Southern Alberta we've had 20 inches in the last 4 years combined. So once again, timing being quite important.
Yeah, 20 inches. Just when it's mature, ready for harvest, really isn't sort of what you like, Shaun.
Yeah. I think I got that right. But one of the challenges for people in some of these dry areas, even like in parts of Saskatchewan where we started off decent, it's been pretty well, really super dry bias through the growing season. We're back again talking about some of the conditions of pasture, and we just didn't finish this crop off as properly as we wanted to when we first put it in the ground. Fall weed control, because this is the time that fall is. I mentioned fall work, and this is when you should be taking care of some of that weed control. What do you do when it's dry? Do you basically wait until there's enough moisture? Like the weeds seem to grow in any, like kochia will grow in any sort of condition, it seems, but it does make you sort of have to put more of maybe a strategic plan together when it comes to fall weed control.
Yeah, 100%, Sean. And to me, and I'm going to sing from this song sheet probably for the next little while, but it's all about weed seed return. And so when we look at the resistant weeds, man, if you allow them to go to seed, so kochia would be one, wild oats, for us it's water hemp. We now have Palmer amaranth. We have this group 14 resistant ragweed. So now ragweed is resistant to just about everything we can throw at it. Man, we just can't let those weeds go to seed. And even when you're in that drought, if it gets setting seed, then next time you go to control weeds in that field, instead of having 10 weeds per square foot or per square meter, you've got 10,000. And a herbicide, the best herbicides only give between 95 and 99% control. And 99% control of 10 weeds per square foot is no weeds left. But of 10,000 weeds, that's, what's that work out to? 10 weeds? I don't know.
A lot.
Way too many weeds, right? Just way too many weeds to have a good crop. And Peter Sickham has done some awesome work on this in water hemp, and when they prevented the water hemp from setting seed for 3 years, they reduced the seed population in the soil by 82%. And when you do that math, man, he's doing it for another 3 years. If he can reduce it by 82% again, then, basically he'll have 96% less weed pressure in 6 years just by not allowing any seed return. So I know it's dry, but man, to just sit back and say, no, it's too dry to do anything, I don't think you can afford to do that, especially when it's tough to control weeds like kochia or wild oats or some of those other real things that have lots of resistance and just become a real problem.
Well, I'll tell you this. I as people know, I live in the city of Lethbridge. Down the block, there's 2 open lots. They've been sold, but no one started to build there yet. Okay. And it is hilarious to watch the people that own those 2 lots manage the weeds. And like for the past 4 years, I have watched them go out there when they do spray the weeds to keep the weeds down on those lots. Because if you had a lawn beside the weeds, you would be furious. So anyway, they go out there and they spray the lots probably after somebody calls the city, and all of the weeds have gone to seed, blown all around the neighborhood, and then someone goes out and sprays, and they think that's being effective. Totally, not exactly a apples to apples comparison, but don't be that guy.
It is apples to apples comparison, and I tweeted some things out, and I've talked about this at some meetings. In our wheat stubble, when we let weeds go to seed, we increase that seed bank, and there's so many fields out there. And I see, I mean, last week I whined about it at a meeting on Thursday. I mentioned a specific field. I don't know whose field it was. I came past there on Saturday, and so maybe because I whined about it, maybe they were planning to do it anyway, but they went in and they tilled it. But the pigweed had already set seed, so knocking them down with that piece of tillage doesn't solve the problem. It maybe stops any further seed set, but we're just too slow to do that a lot of times. And you're right. The seed's there, so guess what? Spraying or tilling or doing whatever after the seed is there, that's just revenge. That's all it is. And before you take over, that 1% on my 10,000 seeds, that's 100 seeds per square foot. I heard the snide remark coming in. What? You can't do that mental math? So, yes, I just needed a second more.
Okay, Pete, we got to take a break. We got more coming up here with myself, Shaun Haney, and Peter Johnson right after this.
Proven Seed is at home in your soil. With the widest seed portfolio in Western Canada, Our seed is developed and tested on and for your local acres. Our hybrids and varieties are tested by hundreds of growers, so we know how our seed will perform in your local conditions. Better returns start with seed that belongs where it's planted, and this seed belongs here. Secure your seed today at your local Nutrien Ag Solutions or visit provenseed.ca to learn more.
What's next for your fields? At Pioneer, delivering industry-leading genetics drives everything we do. From the scientists in the lab to our local teams with boots on the ground, we are determined to get there first. Developing top-performing products, proven in more growing conditions than ever before. Pioneer. What's next happens here. Visit pioneer.com/Canada to learn more.
Introducing the Arion 600 Series tractor by Claas, where versatility meets productivity head on, because you've got jobs to do. Mowing, tedding, raking, baling, loading, filling, tilling, cleaning, spreading, hauling, feeding. This is multi-purpose reimagined to do the work for you. It's more than just power. The Arion 600 tractor gets it done.
In the last segment, we were talking about fall weed control. Speaking of that, let's talk about what you can do with some pre-emergent soil-active herbicides, Valterra EZ and Fierce EZ from New Farm. Get ahead of hard-to-kill weeds. Spray this fall for up to 8 weeks of extended weed control next spring. Find out more about New Farm products by going to newfarm.ca. That was a good segue. I like that. I like when that stuff works out. We are joined by Peter Johnson, continuing our conversation. Pete, one of the things I know you want to talk about was the idea of, okay, we've got standing soybeans, and we're going to broadcast wheat into those standing soybeans. Now, good idea, bad idea? If we are going to do it, what should we do or not do?
So, Shaun, it's really come to the forefront just in the last few years. By the way, as usual, Johnson is such an old guy in this business. It's the third time I've been around this circle, but a lot of growers want to keep wheat in the rotation in Ontario and in Michigan, and which is awesome. But we get years like this where if I'm further north, it's not so applicable. If I'm in Ohio, they never worry about this because they have so much season that they can always get the wheat in a reasonably timely fashion. So I get down into that Windsor, Essex, Kent area. They don't worry about it as much. But, man, I get up into the Bruce Peninsula. I get into central Ontario or further over into eastern Ontario, and the soybeans are super late. And they know they're not going to harvest soybeans till the 20th of October if they're on some fields. And if that's the case, the chances of them ever having an opportunity to seed winter wheat into that canopy, into that field, with a drill, they go to about zero. It's the 1 year in 100 that they would get the right conditions. So a lot of growers have said, wheat will grow on the head of the plant in Ontario because we get rain and humidity and that stupid stuff just seems to suck water up and it'll grow. So why don't I just broadcast the wheat seed into the standing soybeans? And man, that can really work well. I had a client this year that had 115 bushel per acre wheat crop broadcast into standing soybeans last fall. And his drilled wheat that was drilled, I think, a month later, still in decent time, but it was 105. Now, they weren't the same field, same farm, so take it with a grain of salt, but it can really work. And so we discussed a bit about that. Man, I haven't had a topic that got so much pushback and support at both ends of the spectrum in a long time. So when you say good idea, bad idea, there's a whole bunch of parameters. And the first one that we've learned, slugs can wipe out the wheat stand. So you have to spread this wheat seed into the standing soybeans before any leaf turns yellow. So basically, soybeans at the very start of maturity, they'll go from deep dark grained, just a hint lighter green, you got to have the wheat seed in then. And if you do, it seems like the slugs will then continue to feed on the soybean leaves instead of feeding on the wheat kernels, and so you can get a stand. But you'll have thin along the borders, like there's some real ramifications. One grower actually said, yeah, a spinner spreader, and we've got hills. My spreader will spread 120 feet, but if the hill's in the way, it only gets 30 feet. And now I have a bare spot in the wheat field because the seed, just because of the angle of the spinner and how the hills work, I don't always get seed there. And I'm like, wow, that's a really interesting thought process. That means your fertilizer does the same thing. And I never really thought about that, but that was kind of interesting. But then we get to, what about seed treatment? And the last thing, Shaun, the last thing we can do is have treated wheat seed in the soybeans that we harvest. And yet, if we don't use treated seed, then bunt can destroy the whole crop. If you have common bunt or dwarf bunt, it smells like rotten fish. So Johnson, the agronomist, wants you to use treated seed. And I kind of put that out there that I prefer treated seed if possible. I got a whole bunch of people. One grower in particular has done this, I think he said, for 7 or 8 years. And last year was the first year they had treated wheat seed in the soybeans. And they said they thought it was because 2 reasons. They waited too long. There was some leaf drop. Wheat seed landed on the soybean leaves, not on the soil. Plus, it was a dry fall. And so those wheat seeds protected from the soil by the leaves never germinated. The roots never hung onto the soil. They came along to harvest the soybean crop. It was a bit short, and the air reel actually blew wheat seeds into the header. So there's just a bunch of watch outs. You can take treated wheat seed out, but as that grower said, you lose all the splits, and it's got to go spread on the field. You can't send it to the feed trade now like they normally would. So that can cost a bunch of money, but having 115 bushel wheat versus not being able to plant wheat is a massive win. So good, bad, man, there's just a lot of things to think about. Oh, by the way, don't spread the wheat seed when there's dew on the leaves, because the dew will act like glue with the seed treatment, and it will stick the seed right to the stem, right to the leaves. So the canopy's got to be dry. No green leaves, no yellow leaves, like just all green leaves. Spread it on. Use variable rate seeding. Here's another thought process that they threw out. Use the best technology on the lowest technology way of seeding wheat there ever was, and put more on the clay knolls that need more seed, and put more on the outside round, because we know that we don't get as good establishment there, and that's a slug issue. So lots of parameters, but if you see treated wheat seed coming into the bin, you've got to clean it before you put it in the silo. That's all there is to it.
So would you use, I'm thinking of it, and there's probably other brands too, but like that Amazon variable broadcaster, use something like that where it compensates for wind direction and things like. It's just amazing. We talk so much about precision seeding of wheat, and here we're talking about broadcasting. And people had success. Look at Manitoba last year. It was so wet, a lot of it had to get broadcasted, and it did pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. And so, by the way, Shaun, for Pete Johnson to talk about broadcasting wheat into standing soybeans, when I'm all about treat wheat like a real crop, don't treat it like it's like stabbing me in the back.
Does this hurt? Are you okay? Are you having troubles? Do you need to be consoled? Do you need a hug? Are you okay?
I'll survive, Shaun, but it really is not I'm with you. I want precision. There's no precision in broadcast wheat. But on the other hand, we're seeing some nice yield bumps. There's work in the UK right now where they're looking at equidistant seed spacing on wheat. So they're actually planting it in a hexagon. You and I talked a little bit about this, I think, back in June.
Yeah, they do it with corn, right?
Pardon me?
You can do it with corn, so why not wheat?
Yeah, well, even with corn, they're not quite equidistant, but they're getting closer to that because the seeds are further apart. So you get to a 15-inch row in corn, you're pretty close.
Hey,
yeah, exactly.
I remember Kinsey. I'm pretty sure it was Kinsey. We're doing all these free name drops, and I think we're getting it all right. But Kinsey, they were working on technology where you position the kernel properly in the ground. Like you're not sort of random how it's placed. It's positioned exactly so the most efficient launch out of the ground. That's crazy.
Planting corn seed the right way up so that the coleoptile, when it comes out of the seed, is growing towards the surface. It doesn't have to make a 180-degree corner. And there's a bit of research on that says the corn emerges, between 12 and 24 hours. Some people say on cold springs that can even be 2 or 3 days earlier emergence. So yeah, there's something to this stuff for sure. But my broadcast wheat, it gets sort of wheat singulation and equidistant spacing if your fancy spreader does a good job. I don't know. The one grower said though, yeah, do it on flat ground because spinner spreaders on hills you may not do quite as good.
Yeah, but some of those precision spreaders compensate for that stuff again. So
they'll compensate for wind 100%, and I mean, it's not just Amazon, it's Pottinger. It's like I can't think how many names there are out there, but this what I would term a European spreader where they're using the latest in technology to do a good job, but they will do a good job until the hill kind of is right beside the spreader. You're at the bottom of the hill, and we have some pretty steep hills in Ontario, Shaun. So like the spinner doesn't turn because it's sensing the.
Whoa. You have hills. You do not. You do not have what they have in the Palouse.
No, absolutely not. Oh my God.
There's nothing better than harvest photos from the Palouse.
I've been there, Shaun. I haven't been there in harvest, but I have driven through because they were kind enough to have me out to speak, and what an amazing area. But you are right. Like, those aren't hills. Those are mountains that they farm in. Like, they are crazy. You've
got to be able to carry you-know-what around in a wheelbarrow, I think, to be in a combine on some of those high side hills. And if you don't know what we're talking about, just do a Google search on the area in Washington State, the Palouse, right around, Pullman, Washington, where Washington State University is. In between there and Spokane, it's amazing. It is just spectacular and beautiful farmland. A lot of wheat growing there, Pete. That's your kind of country.
And big wheat country.
And by the way, Washington State, big game against Wisconsin this weekend coming up in college football. I think the game's sold out. It's going to be pretty cool. But yeah, that's a pretty neat. That's one of that's like a trademark. We don't have a lot of spot. I don't think there's any other place like that in terms of some of the visuals of the side hills and things like that. What else you got on this week? What else you doing? Just doing some scouting?
No, actually, I'm speaking for Savita in Inkerman on Thursday. That's going to be a blast. They're calling it the Titans of Agronomy. We have Greg Stewart, we have Horst Bonner, we have Albert Tenuta, and we have Wheat Pete Johnson on a panel. And I'm really looking forward to that. I'm out there scouting. I have the word to do. Play practices started last night, Shaun. So I'm learning lines, and I'm trying to figure out how to sing the songs. It's a musical, and Johnson ain't really a singer, but it's going to be fun.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Pete's side hustle, maybe side passion, we should put it, is theater. So yeah, every time every fall, right, is when you do your theater.
I try to do one a year, either fall or winter. Sometimes, Shaun, you can audition and they don't pick you for a part, so you don't always get to choose when you do it exactly. But yeah, it is just my comic relief or my outside influence other than agriculture.
Are you like a real method actor? Do you get into the part and you live it on a day-to-day basis?
So you have to do something so that you're not just Peter Johnson on stage. And so in this particular production, I'm Freda, and so Freda has to have some unique characteristics so that when I get to the theater and I become Freda, I'm not Peter on stage. I'm actually Freda.
That is cool.
And that is not as easy as everyone might think. It's fun.
Hey, that Titans of Agronomy, also, I think you forgot one name in there. It is going to be hosted and moderated by our own Lindsay Smith.
Absolutely. Yep, that's correct. Lindsay's going to be there. I'm looking forward to being able to poke some fun at Lindsay about her woolly pigs. But yes, she is the moderator.
How she has to keep that group under control. I'll tell you, one day, I don't know if I ever talked about on this show, I had to moderate a political panel at the Crops Convention last year, trying to keep Chantal Hébert under control. People laugh at me. Like, there's a whole story to that. But her trying to keep y'all together is going to be, I tell you, that is a tall order for any moderator. That's going to be something. I want to see video of that. Hey, Pete, thanks so much for joining me here today on the show. It's great to have you back. It's great to be back myself, and look forward to next Monday. Sounds good, bud? Okay, we'll talk to you later.
Absolutely. Thanks, Shaun. Have yourself a great week, man.
And it is Wednesday, so a new episode of Wheat Pete's Word drops today as well. Check it out, Wheat Pete's Word, wherever you get your podcasts. Okay, let's take a break. We'll be back with more of RealAg Radio right after this.
Where do you buy your corn and soybean seed from? If you're a Maizex Seeds customer, the answer is other Canadian farmers. With one of the largest pre-commercial testing programs in Canada aimed at meeting local needs, Maizex offers benchmark performance in corn hybrids and soybean varieties from a company owned by Canadian farmers. Ask your Maizex dealer about the best products field by field for your farm, or visit maizex.com today.
The Advancing Women Conference, the National Leadership Conference for Women in Ag, is celebrating 10 years of bringing women in ag together. Whether you're a producer, student, entrepreneur, representative of Grower Association, or corporate agribusiness, invest in yourself in Niagara Falls on November 19th, 20th, and 21st. Visit advancingwomenconference.ca for more information and to register. Welcome back to RealAg Radio. I am Lindsay Smith, and it is time for today's Product Spotlight. Joining me now is Jamie Pegg. He's the General Manager with Honeybee. Jamie, how are you?
I'm absolutely wonderful, Lindsay, and we really appreciate the opportunity to join you on the program today. Looking forward to our conversation.
All right. So, of course, we are in the thick of harvest. How are things out where you are?
You know, in the southwest corner of Saskatchewan here in Frontier area, it's a really scattered set of crops and crop condition. There's a lot of farmers who are disappointed in their year, but they're out there working hard. A lot of them are using our current Airflex machine, and we're excited about that in the difficult conditions that they're in. And there's a few guys that have hit the range just right, that have excellent crops, but they're actually not saying a whole lot right now, just getting their crops in really quickly. So we're excited about that. And as harvest moves on and moves out, it looks like there's some great crops in various areas that we're going to be able to support with our Honeybee product.
All right. Now, of course, when we think headers, so many of us think Honeybee. What's the newest piece in the lineup? What's getting people excited?
Well, we're really excited. We've got our latest product coming up, which is the next generation of our Airflex table. It's called the Honeybee NXT Airflex. And what it is it's the same platform that we have with our Airflex table. It's got the mechanical drive on it, our unique air system, and probably most importantly, our independent cutter bar that shaves so close to the ground. And so we've been able to keep that, but what we've added to it are cab adjustable skid shoes, which is critically important for the farmers, especially in a year like this. We've had lots of areas that have received rain, have knocked some crops down, and to be able to use those skid shoes in that type of situation, adjust them from the cab, is going to give the farmer a huge advantage in future harvests. The other things that we've added to it, we've got better ground following that's taking place because our airbags location have been improved. as we work on the technology and the technology grows on us, we find out how to utilize it better. And our engineers have done just a fantastic job setting up our air systems on this new NXT product. And finally, we've taken another huge advantage of ours, which is narrow end shields. They used to be 8 inches in width, and we've got them down to 5 inches in width, with the hope of not knocking down any crop as the farmer goes by with his combine. We're excited about it. We use it on row crops and tight field borders, everything like that, and it's just another advantage to our product that we look forward to using in the next year. A couple other items that are improved on it, our cross auger has increased in size from 10 inches to 12. And then we've also gone to vertical shears, which is becoming more and more important here in Western Canada and throughout North America. We've made our vertical shears a whole lot easier to install. In fact, when I talked to the engineers and they showed me, they said, all you need is a flathead screwdriver. I thought that's crazy, but you know what? I was using the screwdriver and I could put a vertical shear in place with just that tool. Absolutely incredible work by our guys and girls.
We like it. All right. Now, tell me about sort of when you're working with your engineers, when Honeybee is trying to put together sort of the next generation for its headers, how much of the sort of feedback you get from customers works its way in? What are farmers asking for?
You know what? When we do it, I think one of the real important things at Honeybee is that we're built by farmers for farmers. And I really, really want to emphasize that. It's on our engineering team and with our ownership group, we have a lot of farmers in that have critical input. But we just don't leave it to the people that are in our room. Our product goes throughout the world. So we talk to farmers anywhere pretty well where there's dry land farming, and we bring their input back in. So a lot of times what the farmer is concentrating on is how do I get more out of my header by putting less in? You know, a lot of that is when we talk to the farmer himself, what do they want with this product? They want a reliable product. And that's something that we've worked endlessly on to try and make it as bulletproof as possibly can. I think behind that, the farmer really wants to understand the product. There's a lot of product out there. There's a lot of electronics going into a lot of different things. And we have worked very, very hard to make it understandable and, as a result, very easy to use. And we're getting a lot of those comments back this year about it. We're excited about it. Lightweight is another thing that's critically important to the farmer. The lighter it is in the product, mileage, gas consumption, diesel consumption is something that's critically important to the farmer, and we're trying to minimize that as much as it can. But most importantly, every seed or bean needs to get to the bin, and we're trying to maximize that with the products we produce, and I believe that our engineers and our people are doing a great job of it.
All right, the NXT, as you said, available in a variety of widths. What are we looking at for models?
We are looking at anywhere from 25 feet up to 60 feet. We're excited about it. It goes around the world. I think the other thing, you know, when we talk about it, and I missed this when we were going through it, but one of the things that a farmer is looking for is for his header to run well in really difficult conditions. And I think that's the biggest asset that the NXT Airflex has over everybody else in the marketplace. We can run our head, whether it be rain, snow, otherwise, in conditions that other people haven't been able to do that. And we're really excited about that and excited to show it, even though we want our farmers to be able to harvest in the very best conditions that they can.
We always hope for the best, but not a bad idea to be prepared for the worst. And certainly harvesting in the snow happens. All right, now, of course, those interested, is there a long lineup for these pieces of equipment? Or what do farmers need to know if they would like to order one of the NXT Airflex units?
Well, Lindsay, we're, again, excited about it. We're taking orders right now. Our pricing's been out for just a short time, and we've taken a lot of orders in. We're not going to take any more orders than we can produce. So we're very quickly selling out. So we want to get the farmers who are looking for a new head next year to order their Honeybee NXT Airflex as soon as they possibly can so that we can get it to them before the 2024 harvest.
All right, Jamie, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
We appreciate it, Lindsay, as always.
All right, we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
If I asked you, what's the most important tool on your farm? You'd probably think of tractors, trucks, and implements first. But it's actually something much bigger than that. Your soil is the most important equipment you own. The real question is, are you doing enough to keep it running at peak performance? Nutrien Smart Nutrition MAP plus MST is engineered with patented micronized sulfur technology to refuel your soil for maximum yields. Learn how to tune up your soil at smartnutritionmst.com.
Introducing the all-new Zerion 12 Series tractor by Kloss. Redesigned from the ground up to redefine the high-capacity four-wheel drive market. With 653 max horsepower, industry-leading hydraulic flow, a silky smooth CVT, a powerful TerraTrack undercarriage, and a quiet, comfortable cab with 20% more legroom. More than just power. The all-new Zerion by Kloss.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. It's now time for the top ag news stories of the day, which is brought to you by Granubor from US Borax. Ask for it by name. Go to borax.com. Oh, lots to dig into here. Now, off the top, there's a bit of a deja vu factor here for me, at least initially. So Canada has, well, depending on who you listen to, Canada has won a trade dispute against New Zealand, which complained Ottawa was unfairly restricting access to the domestic market for dairy products. Trade Minister Mary Ng said on Tuesday, according to a story in Reuters. New Zealand had asked the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, the CPTPP, a major trade pact, of course, Canada's access to Asia and that area of the world. This was a dispute panel that was set up, a challenge by New Zealand under that trade agreement. New Zealand had asked the CPTPP to set up this dispute panel to deal with Canada's treatment of the tariff rate quotas. New Zealand, as well as the United States, has consistently complained that Canada is not meeting its obligations under various trade deals to open its market to foreign producers. Now, you just heard me mention the U.S., very similar to some of the resolution in the trade panel, resolution panel that was brought up in the USMCA or the CUSMA agreement. Both sides claiming victory, which makes this so difficult to find some sort of resolution. Canada has said, hey, great, this ruling's in favor of us. New Zealand is saying the exact same thing, which makes it really hard to find some finality to these kinds of trade situations. So I'm not sure where we go from here. In the case of the USMCA, the U.S. began another dispute resolution panel, and there's been threats of retaliation. We'll see what New Zealand does next. But yes, if you look at the New Zealand news, they're also claiming victory, that Canada has not met its obligations when it comes to trade. So what the issue here is, the way I understand it, is that Canada gives a preference to processors. It allocates those tariff rate quotas to domestic processors. Therefore, it in some way kind of locks out full access to exporters trying to get, or companies trying to get product into Canada. It feels very similar. There may be some differences between this CPTPP resolution and the USMCA one, but I think at 100,000 feet, there's a lot of similarity to the complaint. Let's look at Russia and Ukraine. So President Putin announced that Russia will not rejoin the grain deal, allowing Ukrainian grain exports until the West fulfills its demands to facilitate Russian agricultural exports. Quote here, we are not against the deal. We are ready to immediately return to it as soon as the promises made to us are fulfilled. That's all, said Putin in a joint press conference after meeting with his Turkish counterpart. Now, the decision comes after Russia withdrew from the UN-brokered grain deal, which guaranteed the safety of Ukraine's Black Sea grain exports and launched attacks on Ukrainian grain export facilities. Russia's withdrawal from the deal was partially motivated by concerns about hampered food and fertilizer exports due to international sanctions. The U.S. has been working with Turkey and Ukraine to explore alternative export routes for Ukrainian grain, including using the Danube River to ship grain to nearby ports in Romania. Turkey maintains connections with both Russia and Ukraine, serving as kind of this sort of intermediary, helping with some of this logistical hub, according to the story, as they called it in the Wall Street Journal. So now, additionally, on another front, is there's like signals. Okay. This is one of those, like, you sort of like, okay, what do we take from this? Next time I talk to Jacob Shapiro from Cognitive Investments, I'm really interested in asking about this. But Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, is planning to travel to Russia this month to meet with President Vladimir Putin for discussions on potential military cooperation, including supplying Russia with weaponry for its war in Ukraine, according to a story in the New York Times. The meeting is set to take place on the Pacific coast of Russia, where both leaders were expected to attend the Eastern Economic Forum from September 10th to the 13th. So, if you buy into the theory that, we're getting sort of this new allegiance of these axis of power kind of thing, people having to choose sides, I guess we wouldn't be surprised which side North Korea would be on. But it's a little bit uncomfortable. And does North Korea have the money to be supplying goods to Russia like this? I'm not sure about that. Oh boy, this is in some ways it's such an interesting world we live in, and sometimes it's just a very terrifying world that we live in. One corner of the global energy market is getting especially squeezed by Saudi Arabia and Russia's oil production cuts. And that's a commodity that I know you were interested in out there in farm country in Canada and the U.S. That's diesel. So, story of the Wall Street Journal, diesel prices have climbed more than 40% in the U.S. and Europe since May, when surprise output cuts by Saudi Arabia and some other members of the OPEC Plus oil cartel took effect. Most actively traded future prices for Brent crude and West Texas Intermediate, the benchmarks for crude oil, are up 13 and 14% in the same time frame. So diesel up 40, the underlying crude futures only up 13 and 14. The run-up is translating into higher pump prices and trucking costs in the U.S. and everywhere in the West. It reflects the fact that heavier kinds of oil are better suited to making diesel, while others, such as lighter U.S. crude, are more readily turned into gasoline. In the U.S., while the national average price for unleaded gasoline added 7 cents a gallon in August, according to the AAA, the cost of diesel rose 42 cents a gallon. In my trip across the High Line into North Dakota, we paid anywhere from, $3.40 a gallon to $4 a gallon. I don't think we saw over $4 on that trip, but definitely some variance in some of the prices. According to the story in the Journal, Saudi Arabia said Tuesday that it will extend its current cut of 1 million barrels a day through to year-end. Traders and analysts had widely anticipated the policy would last through to October, so the longer time frame surprised the market. Russia's Deputy Minister Alexander Novak said Russia will also keep its 300,000 barrel a day output cut through the end of 2023. In case you're wondering, Europe is hardest hit because the refineries were designed to process a steady stream of Russian feedstocks, but these supplies have largely wound down because of sanctions in the wake of the Ukraine invasion. Lots happen in the world. Okay, if you have any feedback on today's show, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms. And, of course, you can always call that Real Ag listener line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio, and we'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.